So this presentation is meant to provide general legal information, and it does not create an attorney-client relationship, nor are we giving legal advice. This is we're just giving legal information for your knowledge. And this presentation will focus on laws in California. And if you're outside California, this information may not apply to you.
So hay un descargo de responsabilidad, nomás para informarles que ahorita no estamos actuando como sus licenciadas, nomás estamos compartiendo información. La información que estamos dando es acerca de las leyes de California, y si no se encuentra en California cuando esté mirando esto, quizás las leyes sean diferentes.
So today we are going to cover consumer law basics. The CLRA falls under consumer law, and we will discuss what a consumer is. And
sorry about that, my mistake. I'm just trying to go backwards, but there we go.
We will discuss what a consumer is, who is considered a consumer, and what laws protect consumers from false advertising and other dishonest tactics that we will discuss further. Under the Consumer Legal Remedies Act, we will also discuss that there's a demand letter requirement. And as we will discuss later, you can either file a claim in small claims or choose to hire an attorney, depending on the facts of your case.
Entonces, unos conceptos básicos son: ¿qué es un consumidor? ¿Qué leyes protegen a los consumidores de la publicidad falsa y otras tácticas deshonestas? Hay un Consumer Legal Remedies Act, que es la ley de recursos legales del consumidor, y vamos a estar discutiendo esa acta. Incluye una carta de demanda y corte de reclamos menores.
First, we'll go over CLRA's history. It was enacted by California legislature in 1970, and it was due to civil unrest in the 1960s. Basically, what had happened was businesses were continuously in the practice of charging consumers, specifically non-white consumers, outrageous prices for products that weren't working properly or were ineffective. And the government was criticized for these reasons for failed housing, education, economic, and social service policies. All these needed to be amended to better assist the consumer. The report also criticized the media for being too white-oriented. As I mentioned, that non-white communities were being disadvantaged. The CLRA is one of the best protections consumers have, and it gives them the ability to fight against unethical business practices, deception, false advertising that businesses tend to engage in.
Entonces vamos a discutir un poco de historia acerca de la ley de recursos legales del consumidor. Estaba promulgada hace más de 30 años después de los disturbios en la ciudad de Los Ángeles, y pues estaba pasando actualmente por todo el país, pero específicamente hubo actas de civil disobedience que resultaron en más derechos para el consumidor. Una comisión gubernamental descubrió que una razón importante que provocó los disturbios fue la práctica del racismo en realmente, donde las tiendas, los bancos, otros oficiales estaban tomando ventaja de gente de color, de gente pobre en sus prácticas de negocio. Y el informe critica al gobierno por políticas falladas en materia de vivienda, educación económica y servicios sociales. Eso fue algo que era por toda la sociedad, en cada etapa de la sociedad. El informe criticaba a los medios por estar demasiado orientados hacia los bancos, a la gente blanca, a los bancos, a los que estaban en poder. El CLRA, que es la Ley de Recursos Legales del Consumidor, representan una de las armas legales más eficaces que tienen los consumidores para luchar contra las prácticas comerciales de poco éticas, desde derribar los muros de la colusión comercial injusta hasta eliminar los esquemas clásicos del cebo y cambio.
Now we'll discuss what is a consumer. Who is considered to be a consumer under this law? It is anyone who purchases or leases goods or services from a retailer, wholesaler, or manufacturer. That's really broad, and it's a good thing because it covers a lot of people. And these goods or services need to be purchased for personal reasons. So those purchased for business purposes are not covered.
Entonces, ¿qué es un consumidor? Un consumidor es alguien que compra bienes o necesita servicios de parte de un minorista, mayorista o fabricante. So, todos somos consumidores y tenemos derechos que se tienen que proteger.
And these consumer laws are set to protect consumers, anyone who buys or leases services or goods, from dishonest or illegal tactics by sellers. A few of these tactics or deceptions, dishonest practices include false advertising, selling products that are dangerous and not disclosing that, selling products that don't work and also not disclosing that, concealing hidden defects, or even discriminating based on race, color, religion, national origin, etc.
Entonces, las leyes de consumidora protegen varios derechos. Las leyes protegen a los consumidores de tácticas deshonestas, otras tácticas ilegales por parte de los vendedores, como la publicidad falsa, vender productos que son peligrosos, ocultar los defectos, o vender productos que no funcionan, o la discriminación basada en raza, color, religión, origen nacional o cualquier discriminación por la sociedad que existe.
I also wanted to say, all in all, this law creates more fairness for the consumer because nobody wants to pay for something that is either not the actual product or a misrepresentation of what they were told they were going to get. You want your money to go towards what you actually think you're paying for. And that's where these laws come into play. There are laws that the government can enforce, federal state laws specifically. The Consumer Product Safety Commission has a website, saferproducts.gov, where anybody, consumer or not, can visit this website and you can file and read complaints about thousands of products. You could either type in the product name and look it up if you're considering to purchase a product and you want to see if there's any issues with it, if it's been reported, or you can report a specific product that you have already purchased and have seen that there's been issues with that product. with that product. By doing this, consumers actually help the government to send out recalls if necessary, seek penalties against any person, firm, business, or to create new safety regulations, or even take on actions authorized by law. So by reporting, it helps you and it helps the public. And you don't lose anything by either reporting or viewing the products that have been reported. It just helps you.
Entonces, los tipos de leyes de protección al consumidor. Leyes que solo el gobierno puede hacer cumplir. Hay leyes federales y estatales. Por ejemplo, los consumidores pueden informarse sobre productos peligrosos y sobre las regulaciones que cubren los diferentes productos. Pueden hacer investigación sobre lo que otros consumidores hayan dicho, experienciado con el producto. Pueden buscar si los productos han sido retirados y pueden investigar las leyes sobre las sanciones o las diferentes maneras que productos han sido, que los fabricantes de productos han sido castigados por decepción que hayan hecho.
Then there are laws that the consumers themselves can use. Depending on your case and the amount of damages, you can sue federal court, state court, or small claims court. If the damages are less than $10,000, that falls under small claims. And we will discuss in a later slide what number you need to reach to determine which court to file in. And I also want to mention really quickly that bringing a CLRA claim doesn't bar you from bringing another claim. Let's say that you have a defective vehicle, which can qualify as a lemon, so you can possibly file under lemon law, but the dealership also lied to you about the quality of the car, or they falsely advertised something about the vehicle. Nothing prohibits you from filing both under lemon law and under CLRA. So you would be able to claim damages under both laws and get restitution under both.
Hay diferentes tipos de leyes para la protección del consumidor. Y los consumidores mismos pueden utilizar las cortes federales, las cortes estatales, las cortes de reclamos menores. También lo que añadió la señorita Yeva fue que cuando hagan una demanda consumidora, también pueden hacer otra demanda por lo civil, por la decepción o por el defecto. So no piensen que nomás tienen una manera de demandar, porque hay varias opciones.
Now we will discuss specifically what is the Consumer Legal Remedies Act. This law is written under Civil Code Section 1750 to 1784. So if any of you want to actually read the code section, you can refer to Civil Code Section 1750. And it basically prohibits many types of unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices, as we will discover further in the next few slides. And again, this is in connection with the sale or lease of goods or services that is bought or leased for personal reasons. personal, family, home, those kind of reasons.
Entonces, ¿qué es la ley de remedios legales del consumidor que se dice CLRA? Pues esta ley existe en el Civil Code, que se encuentra en la sección 1750. Pueden ir a la biblioteca de leyes en el centro y buscar la ley y la pueden leer por ustedes mismos. Una ley que prohíbe muchos tipos de métodos desleales de competencia y actos o prácticas injustas o engañosas, y en relación con la venta de bienes o servicios para el uso personal.
Again, who can sue for a violation under the CLRA? Consumers can sue. And as we discussed before, a consumer is anybody who buys or leases goods or services. And basically, after you make such a purchase for personal, family, or household purposes, you might have a claim under the CLRA if there has been any deceptive tactics involved. So it all depends on the facts of the case. Usually, you can tell if you've been deceived or if you see that your product is not working properly, but you could also always call an attorney and discuss your case with an attorney to see if you do have a viable claim. And it is also important to do this as soon as possible because, as we will discuss in the later slides, there is a statute of limitations. There is a time limitation on how much time you have to actually file a claim. And there's also a notice requirement, which takes 30 days. So as soon as you suspect you are having issues with the product, make sure to address it and possibly call an attorney about it.
Entonces, disculpen que antes no me acordaba de la traducción por Civil Code, pero es Código Civil y la sección es 1750. So, si buscan en el Código Civil, ahí encuentran la ley. Entonces, ¿quién puede demandar por una violación de CLRA? Los consumidores pueden demandar por infracciones después de realizar una compra que hay un problema con el producto. Pero tengan cuidado, hagan su demanda rápidamente cuando sepan que hay un problema, porque hay varios estatutos de limitaciones, entonces no es indefinitivamente y tienen que hacer su reclamo pronto. So, es buena idea hablar con un licenciado, licenciada para discutir su demanda.
Now we will discuss damages, which is basically what you can ask the court for. And if you do have a case under CLRA, these are the damages you might be entitled to for dealing with a defective product. These damages include legal remedies, which is money, equitable relief, which basically means that the court can make the other side do something or stop doing something. So they could, this is called specific performance, when the other side is forced to do something or to stop doing something. That's like injunctive relief. And the court may also set punitive damage if the defendant's behavior was especially harmful. And punitive damage are just additional damages set to, in a way, punish or teach a lesson to make sure that such behavior does not occur again. And there's also an additional award of up to $5,000 for seniors or people with disabilities. And if you do refer to the code section, it talks about what disabilities are covered. It's pretty broad. And as for senior citizens, that's anybody older than 65. If they suffer any physical, emotional, or economic damage, which they probably do. And they're also entitled to attorney's fees and costs if you win, if the plaintiff prevails, or if the defendant acted in bad faith. This is very important because there is an exception if the defendant did not act in bad faith, and we will discuss that soon.
Entonces, ¿qué puedo pedir en la corte? Entonces, en términos de remedio, ¿verdad? Remedios legales son, pues, el objetivo más importante es el dinero, ¿verdad? Entonces, ese es un remedio legal que está disponible. Hay también alivio equitativo. Por ejemplo, uno puede obligar al vendedor o al fabricante que haga algo o que pare de hacer algo. Eso es un alivio equitativo. Daños punitivos. Si el comportamiento fue especialmente dañoso o tenía una decepción que fue muy grande, que la corte piense esto fue al propósito, y si no hacemos un ejemplo de este tipo de comportamiento, entonces otros fabricantes, minoristas, mayoristas van a seguir este tipo de decepción que es mal para el consumidor. Puede haber hasta $5,000 adicionales para personas mayores o personas discapacitadas si hay ciertas circunstancias. Honorarios de abogados y costos judiciales otorgados a la parte vencedora solo para acusados de mala fe.
Also important to note is that under the CLRA, there is a notice and cure requirement, which basically means that before you actually file a lawsuit, you're required to notice the seller and to give them an attempt to try to fix the issue. So you do this by sending a demand letter, and this basically gives the seller a chance to actually try to cure the defect.
También es importante que antes de demandar, debe uno intentar de resolver el problema acercándose al vendedor y tratar de resolver una solución. Eso se puede hacer por medio de una carta, hablar con el mayorista, minorista o fabricante, y si no encuentran solución o un compromiso, luego definitivamente hay el paso de seguir una demanda.
Now we will discuss the list of prohibited acts under the law. There's about 24, which is really good because it covers a broad list of acts that the seller cannot engage in. This includes passing off goods or services as those of another. This is basically lying about what goods or services you're selling and claiming that it's somebody else's, maybe another business's. That is false and misleading. Second, it's misrepresenting the source, sponsorship, approval, or certification of goods or services. This could be possibly claiming that something is, let's say, organic when it's not organic, or saying that you have some kind of approval from an organization or agency when you don't. Third, it's misrepresenting affiliation, connection, or association with, or certification by another, which is similar to number 2. And using deceptive representations of geographic origin in connection with goods or services. Let's say you're buying a product that you think is from, like coffee, if you think it's from South America when it's not, or like olive oil, let's say it's from Italy when it's from somewhere else. Like you're looking to buy a product that you think is better quality based upon where it was produced or where it's from, and it in fact is not produced from there, which possibly leads it to be of lower quality. Or even representing that goods or services have sponsorship, approval, characteristics, ingredients, uses, benefits, or qualities that they do not have, or that a person has sponsorship, approval, status, affiliation, or connection that he or she does not have. As you can see, this is all really broad and it covers a lot of misrepresentations or a lot of acts. So if you do again suspect that you purchased or leased a product that is not up to par, then look into contacting someone or addressing that yourself. And examples include counterfeits or knockoffs. So as you can see, like you might think you're buying something that's brand name and you spend hundreds of dollars on a product that's actually not a brand name. So you're wasting your money on a product and you're being lied to. And for those reasons, you are entitled to restitution or damages under this code section, under this law.
Entonces, discutiendo los actos prohibidos acerca del Código Civil 1770, transmitir bienes o servicios como los de otro. Esa es una decepción, ¿verdad? Y luego, certificación de bienes o servicios. Si uno piensa que, por ejemplo, está haciendo negocio con cierto vendedor o por cierto producto y no es, ese es también otro tipo de decepción. Tergiversar, afiliación, conexión o asociación con o certificación por otro, o usar representaciones engañosas de origen geográficos en relación con bienes o servicios. La señorita Yeva dio el ejemplo de, por ejemplo, uno piensa que está comprando aceite de olivo de Italia y luego es de otro país o uno piensa que está comprando un producto por un fabricante y luego realiza que en realidad es una imitación. Representar que los bienes o servicios tienen patrocinio, aprobación, características, ingredientes, usos, beneficios o cantidades que no tienen, o que una persona tiene un patrocinio, aprobación, estatus, afiliación o conexión que él o ella no tiene. Eso es decepción también. Y luego dio un ejemplo de es un ejemplo de una decepción material por ejemplo, dio de la bolsa que se representa que es de Louis Vuitton, pero en realidad, si uno se fija, no es, o de cualquier producto que uno piensa, es de verdad y luego no es. Es una decepción.
More prohibited acts include representing that goods are original or new, but in fact they have been deteriorated unreasonably or altered, reconditioned, secondhand, used, or reclaimed. So you think you're buying something new, but in fact it's not new at all, and they're just lying to you that it is new. or original. And representing that goods or services are of a particular standard, quality, or grade, or that goods are of a particular style or model if they are of another in reality.
Entonces, otros actos prohibidos es la representación que algo es nuevo cuando realmente es usado o deteriorado o está modificado o es algo de segunda mano, o representar que los bienes o servicios son de una estándar o calidad o grado particular y luego el resultado es que son bajo calidad o no tienen el estandarte de calidad que uno piensa.
This also includes disparaging the goods, services, or business of another by false or misleading representations of fact. This goes to the unfair competition that's covered under the law. And an example of this is that business A misrepresented business C's product by telling the buyer that business C's products contain pesticides, even though in reality they're 100% organic. So this is jeopardizing somebody else's business, and that leads to unfair competition, and businesses are not allowed to do that.
Otros actos prohibidos es despreciar los bienes, servicios o negocios de otro mediante una representación falsa o engañosa de los hechos. Por ejemplo, uno puede decir, oh, es todo natural, pero en realidad tiene química o otro ingrediente que no están clamando, que no están diciendo que no es aprobado para ese uso. Por ejemplo, la empresa del producto de la empresa Z, al decir que los productos de la empresa Z contienen pesticidas, aunque los productos de Z son 100% orgánicos. So, la decepción puede ir positivamente o negativamente. La decepción es algo que no es al bien del consumidor y es un acto prohibido que este Código Civil está tratando de remediar.
More prohibited acts include, as subsections 9 to 13 will cover, falsely advertising goods or services with the intent not to sell them as advertised. So basically the seller knows that they're lying about in the advertisement claiming something else when they know that that in fact is not true at all. It also includes falsely advertising goods and services with the intent not to supply a reasonably expectable demand. So this is when the seller knows that they don't have enough products to sell, and yet they claim that they have more than they actually do. So this falls under false advertising unless the advertisement specifically discloses that there is a limit. This also includes falsely advertising furniture without indicating that it is unassembled, or without showing the price it costs to assemble the product for you. So you see a picture of an assembled product, you think it's coming assembled, but it comes all in boxes and you have to take care of it. But the ad conveyed that it would come assembled. It also prohibits making false or misleading statements of fact concerning reasons for price reductions. So if the seller is claiming that the reason why their prices were reduced is because, let's say, they have too much of the product, but in fact it's because it's a poor quality product and they're just trying to get it off their hands, that is prohibited by the CLRA.
Entonces, otros actos prohibidos según el Código Civil 1770, se prohíbe la publicidad engañosa de bienes o servicios con la intención de no venderlos como se anuncia, o bienes y servicios con la intención de no suministrar la demanda razonablemente esperada, a menos que el anuncio revele límites. Por ejemplo, pueden decir, nomás hay cierta cantidad cuando en realidad hay bastante, o no dar la visión de que nomás hay una cantidad limitada, haciendo el consumidor creer que hay bastante del producto y en realidad no. Son muebles sin indicar que están sin ensamblar. Uno piensa, voy a comprar esta silla, ya viene asemblada, y luego en realidad viene la caja y uno tiene que asemblar la silla. Prohíbe hacer declaraciones de hechos falsos o engañosos sobre las razones, la existencia o las cantidades de las reducciones de precios.
We're about more than halfway through the list of prohibited business acts. And again, the fact that there is such a long list of acts, it actually benefits the consumer. That's why we're going through each one. There are times where you don't even know that something that happened to you falls under this law. And by going over each one, you learn that it indeed applies to you, and you might have a legal remedy for that. Another one includes representing that a transaction confers or involves rights, remedies, or obligations that it does not have or involved or that are prohibited by law. An example of this is, let's say you purchase a VIP concert ticket from Concerts R Us, and it advertises a one-on-one meet and greet with the artist, when it doesn't really do that, but the only benefit from the ticket is that you get a front row seat. So again, you think you're getting something and you pay for that. You pay for the value of that, but you don't receive something close to that.
Entonces, la lista de actos prohibidos es bastante largo, pero eso beneficia al consumidor porque asegura más protecciones. Otra vez, esto es acerca del del Código Civil de 1770. Y otro acto prohibido es representar que una transacción confiere derechos, recursos o obligaciones que no tiene o que están prohibidos por la ley. Por ejemplo, uno puede comprar un boleto a un concierto y el boleto dice, te da este derecho a ir a hablar con el artista, tomar una foto con él. En realidad, el boleto simplemente le da al consumidor el derecho de estar en un asiento en la primera fila, pero uno no tiene la oportunidad de ir a tomar una foto con el artista o de hacer cualquier otra cosa que hayan dicho, que se haya prometido, que en realidad no es un derecho y es una decepción al consumidor.
Also included is representing that a part, replacement, or repair service is needed when it's not. So you go into the dealership to get let's say your oil for an oil change, and they tell you that, we inspected your car and you actually need this replacement or that replacement. That's going to cost you, that's going to be an out-of-pocket cost for you. That is a misleading statement. It also includes representing that the subject of a transaction has been supplied in accordance with a previous representation when it has not. So you're in the middle of a transaction with the seller and they tell you this part of our transaction, we've already taken care of that. So, but it in fact has not been taken care of and you're entitled to that if that is a part of your transaction. Also representing that the consumer will receive a rebate, discount, or other economic benefit if the earning of the benefit is contingent on an event to occur subsequent to the consummation of the transaction. So you're in the middle of a transaction and the seller is telling you, we'll give you a discount if this thing in the future happens. That is not allowed. So if you buy this car today, you will receive a 50% discount if it rains tomorrow. This is obviously a very extreme example, but there are occasions where they basically cannot promise you a discount or anything like that for something that might happen in the future.
Otros actos prohibidos son representar que se necesita una pieza, reemplazo o servicio de reparación cuando no es necesario. Por ejemplo, uno va a que le cambien el aceite al carro y luego le dicen, oh, necesitas llantas, frenos y otros servicios que en realidad no se necesitan. O representar que el sujeto de una transacción ha sido suministrado de acuerdo con una manifestación previa cuando no lo ha hecho, o representar que el consumidor recibirá un reembolso, descuento, un beneficio económico si la obtención del beneficio depende que algo ocurra en un evento posterior a la consumación de la transacción. Por ejemplo, si uno dice, compras esta paraguas ahora y si llueve mañana, pues le damos un descuento de 40%. Eso es una decepción, una promesa que no es legal, que es un acto prohibido acerca del Código Civil, sección 1770.
18, misrepresenting the authority of a salesperson, representative, or agent to negotiate the final terms of a transaction with the consumer. This has to do with claiming someone has authority to do something when they in fact don't. An example is a salesperson who is not a licensed contractor, salesperson under the California Contract Code, but he continues to represent himself as one who is licensed and able to facilitate the term, to negotiate the terms of a transaction. It also includes, like an example is if a realtor's unlicensed assistant negotiates the sale on behalf of the real estate agent. This is also misrepresenting the authority of the assistant since they are not licensed. And inserting an unconscionable provision in a contract. An unconscionable contract is a contract that is so severely one-sided and unfair that the contract is deemed unenforceable. This basically, an unconscionable contract or provision in a contract leaves one of the parties with no real meaningful choice. There might be differences in bargaining power, like you might be dealing with someone who has some kind of advantage over you, whether it's, let's say the buyer is an elderly person and that could more easily be deceived or taken advantage of, these or misled. These kinds of provisions are unenforceable. So an example of this is a provision in a car sales agreement stating that if you are late on one payment, even if it's a day late, you have to return your car back the next day. So this is unfair, and you don't really have a choice when you're dealing with a seller in this situation, because let's say these are all extreme examples, but there are occasions where you are left with no real meaningful choice, and it's like a take it or leave it situation. So if you are dealt with something like that, you might have a claim under this section.
Otros actos prohibidos es la autoridad de un vendedor, representante o agente para negociar los términos finales de una transacción con un consumidor, si no es que ellos tienen ese derecho. Por ejemplo, un vendedor que no es vendedor contratista con licencia según el Código de Contratista en California, o un asistente sin licencia del agente. Eso es una decepción, es una transacción deceptiva. También añadir una disposición desmedida en el contrato, que es muy excesiva y es contra el consumidor y es a favor del fabricante minorista mayorista. Por ejemplo, una disposición en un acuerdo de venta de automóviles que establece que si uno se atrasa en un pago solamente por un día, que tiene que regresar el carro. Ese es un caso de una disposición a favor del vendedor, y es contra el interés del consumidor y es contra la ley, porque no es balanceada, es excesiva en el interés contra el consumidor.
More prohibited business acts include robocalls and predatory tactics. So robocalls are basically automated calls. We all get them, unfortunately. These are the scam calls that we get. Most of our phones actually now change the caller ID to scam likely. So you already know that this is a scam, not to pick up, possibly block the number. And this is because like phone companies have actually labeled these calls as scam likely, because this is such a big issue. There are billions of robocalls a year, and millions of dollars are lost to these calls because people think they are legitimate calls when in fact they are not. These calls they cover a broad range of areas. So they might tell you that your payment is due or your payment is late. They might call from pretending to be a collections agency, or that you've won some money or a gift. They might call regarding your student loans or car warranties, stuff like that, to get you to either think that this is a legitimate call. It's about my it's about my finances, it's from the IRS, but they're in fact scams. So you can protect yourself from these calls by either seeing the scam likely, or usually what I do is, even if I pick up and someone's calling me about my finances or something, I hang up and I call the bank to make sure that, let's say if this is a legitimate call, or I call whatever agency that call was supposedly from. I'll actually look up the number online and I'll call to make sure that I'm talking to an actual person and someone who actually works for that organization or agency. So under the CLRA, none of these calls are allowed without an established relationship. So you know who's calling you, or you've requested that call. So this is just to prevent you from losing any money and to being misled. This also includes text message scams. Yes, this includes text message scams and possibly emails. So this also covers predatory tactics, no predatory home improvement contract sales that encumber property and try to take advantage of senior citizens. So this is specifically when someone calls a senior citizen and tells them, like, you're improving your home, you're trying to remodel, I could give you a loan and help you with this, when in fact they're not going to give you a loan. You're just going to lose money, or they're going to end up putting a loan on your property and encumber your property. So an encumbrance basically means anything that impedes what a land or homeowner can do with their property. So you don't want to give in, and you don't want your parents or grandparents to give in to any of these predatory tactics and lose something that has to deal with their property, the property that they've worked hard to acquire or that you've worked hard to acquire. So just beware of these tactics and always be cautious of who you're talking to, especially when it deals with large transactions or like these. Also, nobody can charge an unreasonable fee for helping you get public social services. These things are online and they're free to access. And you basically, instead of getting misled to pay someone to help you get public social services, you could either do it yourself, or you could just contact them, the public social services, and they will help you get the services you need. So you don't need to actually, you shouldn't lose money to get these services.
Entonces, otros actos prohibidos son las llamadas automáticas sin relación establecida o solicitud del destinatario. Entonces, cuando usted no requiere, no busca información, ciertos bancos o otros servicios y le entran llamadas automáticas, eso es otro acto prohibido. No hay contratos depredadores de mejoras para el hogar que graben una propiedad y traten de aprovecharse de los ancianos. Por ejemplo, llaman y dicen, te ayudamos a sacar dinero de tu casa, y en realidad uno no está buscando un préstamo sin cobrar tarifas irrazonables por ayudar a las personas a obtener servicios sociales públicos. Hay muchas agencias que dan los servicios sociales al público gratis o a bajo costo, y hay estas agencias que mandan llamadas automáticas y les dicen a la persona, les voy a cobrar una cantidad muy grande para hacer ese servicio, y uno nomás está perdiendo el dinero. Y tienen que tomar mucha precaución con quién están hablando negocio financiero sobre el teléfono para no perder su dinero o su inversión de dinero.
I also wanted to mention from the last slide that this is where the additional damages of $5,000 might come into play. So I just want to remind you that senior citizens and disabled consumers may get an additional award of up to 5,000 damages if they have suffered substantial physical, emotional, or economic damage as a result of the defendant's conduct. And regarding not charging unreasonable fees for helping people get social services, if you are a victim of this, you might be entitled to treble damages, which is you get 3 times your actual damages because someone charged you an unreasonable fee for helping you get public social services.
Did you want to interpret that, Roberta?
Sí, entonces hay diferentes llamadas, actos prohibidos. No hay llamadas automáticas sin relación establecidas por una llamada que usted ha hecho. Entonces, this is actually the last slide's translation, so I don't know if there's another one for the one. This is the one from the one before.
Yeah, I just added something that senior citizens and disabled people get an additional damages of up to $5,000 if they have suffered substantial physical, emotional, or economic damage.
Entonces, si unos mayores han sufrido un daño, hay adicionales, dinero adicional que pueden agarrar de recompensa por el daño que se ha hecho por un acto prohibido.
Also, the last thing about on this slide was that if someone is unreasonably charged for public social services, they might be entitled to treble damages, which is 3 times their actual damages.
Entonces, a veces, si el daño ha sido bastante con bastante decepción, que uno puede obtener daños hasta 3 veces el daño que sufrieron.
Now we will discuss important terms for you to know. A person under the CLRA is more than just a consumer. It also includes a partnership, corporation, association, and a limited liability corporation. So under the CLRA doesn't just cover people, it actually covers businesses too. A consumer is any individual who purchases or leases goods or services for personal, family, or household purposes. This does not include gifts, and it does not include, it doesn't include gifts. Goods are tangible assets purchased or leased for personal, family, or household purposes or consumption. This includes coupons, certificates that consumers redeem for tangible goods. Services include work, labor, and services used for commercial activities other than business purposes. Services are often included in the sale or repair of consumer goods. And as we mentioned earlier, a senior citizen is an individual who is at least 65 years old.
Entonces, hay unos términos importantes que vamos a cubrir. Una persona de protección que está protegida por el CLRA es una persona que se define de más formas que simplemente etiquetar a un consumidor como un individuo. Una persona también incluye una sociedad, una corporación, una asociación y una corporación de responsabilidad limitada. Un consumidor es cualquier individuo que busca o adquiere mediante compra o arrendamiento bienes o servicios utilizados para fines personales, familiares o domésticos. No incluye regalos. Bienes son activos comprados o arrendados para el consumo personal, familiar o doméstico, y esto incluye cupones, certificados que los consumidores canejan por activos tangibles servicios, trabajo de mano o de obra y servicios utilizados para actividades comerciales que no sean fines comerciales. Los servicios a menudo se incluyen en la venta o reparación de bienes o consumo, cuidando de la tercera edad, una persona que tiene más de 65 años, entonces pueden ser recompensados con daños más grandes porque la decepción incluye la decepción de la gente mayor.
What is required under the CLRA is before you file a lawsuit in court, you are required to give the seller notice of this problem with the products and to give them at least 30 days to address it, make it right, or say that they will make it right. You do this by sending a demand letter to the seller. You send it via certified mail or and request a return receipt. And in this demand letter, you state all the facts of the case, the date, the time, the place of purchase. You describe the goods or services. You state what issues you've had, what problems you had. And in your demand letter, you also state how they can cure this problem, how they can make it right. And you give them a 30-day deadline to address your demand letter from the date they receive it. And you should also let them know that if they don't either address it or say that they will cure this, then you are going to file a lawsuit. So they have 30 days to respond. You could either, depending on your case, depending on if it's a small claims matter, you can put together this demand letter yourself, or depending on your case, you can contact an attorney and they will do it for you.
Entonces, requerido es un aviso y oportunidad de curar. Antes de presentar una demanda en la corte, uno debe de notificar al vendedor y darle por menos 30 días para curar el defecto o la decepción o el problema con el producto. Una carta de demanda es requerida. A veces si no está en la corte de casos menores, uno tiene que escribir la carta de demanda uno mismo. Si no está, es un caso de más de $10,000, entonces es en la corte civil y un licenciado o licenciada va a escribir la carta de demanda describiendo lo que uno está pidiendo en daños, indica la fecha, la hora y el lugar de donde uno compró el producto o agarró el servicio. La carta debe describir los bienes o los servicios que recibieron y con bastante detalle describir el problema, expresar su demanda de cómo pueden hacerlo bien y les da más de 30 días por lo menos para desde el día de la fecha de recepción informarles que presentará una demanda si el problema no está rectificado.
I mentioned this earlier when we were discussing damages, that there is a good faith exception. So no damages can be awarded under CLRA when the business or person alleged to have violated the act proves that the violation was not intentional. And the violation resulted from a bona fide error despite reasonable procedures adopted to avoid such error, and the business or person makes an appropriate correction, repair, or replacement, or other remedy. So all three of these need to happen for this exception to apply. This basically happens when the business or person did not have the intent to violate the act, did not intend to sell you a subpar product. So it was unintentional, but this still happened despite reasonable procedures adopted to avoid such error. So if they can show this, that they do have reasonable procedures to avoid problems like this, and they make an appropriate correction, then this good faith exception applies, and no damages can be awarded.
Hay una excepción de buena fe y no pueden obtener daños abajo del CLRA, la Ley de Recursos Legales del Consumidor, cuando la empresa o la persona que se está demandando demuestra que la violación no fue intencional, que la violación resultó de un error, y a pesar de los procedimientos razonables, todavía se hizo ese error, y que realiza una corrección o reparación o reemplazo o un remedio apropiado. Y todas las tres cosas tienen que estar en efecto al mismo tiempo, que es la empresa o la persona que uno está demandando demuestra que no hubo intento de tomar ventaja del consumidor. La violación resultó de un error que no se intentó, y que hayan tratado de reparar o reemplazar el consumidor.
I also want to mention that regarding the 30-day requirement, the defendant is required to address the letter and to either solve the problem or agree to do so within a reasonable amount of time, which might take more than 30 days. So if they do agree to do this within a reasonable amount of time within the 30 days, that is allowed as well. So that gives them a little bit more time to solve the issue. And I mentioned the third. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to move on to the next slide, but go ahead.
Hay una fecha límite para presentar una demanda. La demanda debe iniciarse no más de 3 años al partir de la fecha de la infracción, según el Código Civil de 1783.
And that was, of course, the statute of limitations is 3 years from the date that the misrepresentation occurred. So you do have 3 years, and because there is a 30-day limit, and because the 30-day notice requirement, and because you might not discover the product or the goods or services fall under any of the 24 the list of the 24 types of prohibited business acts. Because that takes a while, it is better for you if you do, as soon as you suspect anything, to address it as soon as possible, so that if you have to file a lawsuit, you do so within the 3-year statute of limitations, just to make things a lot easier for you too. And if the seller doesn't make it right, then you may want to sue in court. So there is a small claims court, and this is when the dispute is for damages of $10,000 or less. There's a less expensive filing fee than other lawsuits, a quicker turnaround time than other lawsuits, and you don't have an attorney here, this is by yourself since it's small claims court, and there is also no jury.
Entonces, si el vendedor, disculpen que mi mascota está ladrando al cartero. Un momento mientras que para de ladrar. Diario mi mascota pelea con el cartero. Entonces, si el vendedor se niega a solucionar el problema, es posible que desee presentar una demanda en los tribunales. Hay la Corte de Reclamos Menores. Si la disputa es por daños de $10,000 o menos, $10,000 o menos, el beneficio es que la tarifa de presentación cuesta menos. El tiempo de respuesta es más rápido y que ni una demanda por lo civil. No puede contratar un abogado. Uno se representa solo y no hay jurado. Es quizás una cosa que pensar, pero realmente es una solución rápida y uno puede obtener sus daños y a veces es una ventaja ir por la Corte de Reclamos Menores.
Depending on your case, you could also file in a limited jurisdiction court if the dispute is under, if the damages is under $25,000. And there is a quicker turnaround than general jurisdiction courts. There is a limit on discovery, and you can hire an attorney and demand a jury trial. General jurisdiction courts are for disputes with damages over $25,000, and this is the most expensive and slowest process. And again, you can hire an attorney and demand a jury trial.
Entonces hay varios cortes por lo civil, tribunales de jurisdicción limitada es cuando la disputa tiene valor de menos de 25,000. Puede presentarse una demanda en un tribunal de jurisdicción limitado. La respuesta es más rápida que otros tribunales de jurisdicción general. Uno puede contratar un abogado y puede obtener exigir un jurado. Ese es también otro beneficio. Hay tribunales de jurisdicción general y eso es si la disputa es más de $25,000. Es un poco más caro y la demanda es un poco más lenta para concluir y puedes contratar un abogado y también el beneficio es que puede uno exigir un jurado.
You can also file a complaint with the California Attorney General's office. So basically here, you may report a complaint about a business, or you can even check the complaint referral table to find the government agency that regulates the business. So you might not need to contact the Attorney General's office, but there's a list of agencies that regulate, let's say, accounting or anything that you might want to search. There may be an agency that regulates that business. So you could report your complaint directly to that regulating agency. If your complaint is not against a business that is regulated by another agency, then you may file your complaint with the Attorney General's office. And these complaints are used by the Attorney General's office to learn about misconduct that happens among businesses and to determine whether to investigate a company. And a disclaimer is that this office, the Attorney General's office, cannot provide legal advice or assistance to individuals. So you could also, if you think a business has committed fraud or a crime, you can tell your local district attorney's office or call your city attorney. And if you need legal advice or representation, then you can also consult an attorney.
Entonces, uno puede ir en el internet para buscar el procurador general. Hay procuradores general para el estado y también para las vecindades locales. Y puede encontrar cómo presentar una queja también ante la oficina del fiscal general de California. Y hay diferentes maneras de hacer las compañías responsables si es que defrauden o hacen decepción contra el consumidor, y uno tiene que investigar la manera de demandar estas oficinas, demandar estos negocios con la ayuda de el gobierno y estas oficinas, y siempre es disponible, es bueno tener disponible un licenciado o licenciada para que explique los derechos que uno tiene.
There are other resources available to you as well. To find more information on CLRA, you can ask a law librarian from the LA Law Library. You can visit this website, and under representing yourself and under get legal help, you can there find how you can contact a law librarian.
Entonces hay bastantes recursos para encontrar información para demandar bajo las protecciones de CLRA, que es de vuelta son la Ley de Recursos Legales del Consumidor. La Biblioteca de Leyes, que se encuentra en el centro de Los Ángeles, y también hay otros sitios locales, tiene mucha información, y uno puede ir al internet para informarse de cómo las horas de la biblioteca y cómo conseguir información para demandar bajo de la Ley de Recursos Legales del Consumidor.
Another resource to help you file a lawsuit is the California Court Self-Filing Basics, found at this link. And they basically go over civil court cases and how to represent yourself in a civil case. This is especially helpful if you're going to be representing yourself.
Entonces también hay los recursos de las Cortes de California. Uno puede ir en el internet para representarse. Autorrepresentación es un derecho que uno siempre tiene, y hay bastante ayuda en estas páginas que el gobierno hace disponible, y si uno va al internet las puede encontrar sobre, como les dije, la autorrepresentación.